to Apothecary After Dark. Welcome to Apothecary After Dark. I'm Danielle.
And I'm Dina. We're the co-owners of Amityville Apothecary. You ever wonder what happens when we shut off the lights and lock the doors of Amityville Apothecary? What we talk about when nobody's around? What we think about all things metaphysical and witchy? Well, stay tuned because we have some really fun topics for you.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Apothecary After Dark. I'm Danielle.
I'm Dina. We're co-owners of Amityville Apothecary here, Amityville, New York, Long Island, about an hour outside of New York City. So we got another episode for you today.
It's so funny because we didn't even know exactly what we were going to talk about when we arrived. But then somebody said, can you talk about spirit guides? And we said, oh, yeah.
Spirit guides. And it's interesting because, you know, having the shop for over 5 years and being in a spiritual journey much longer than that, the notion of spirit guide is something we talk about. We talk about spirit guides and ancestors and deities, but not with, I think, the fervor that we once did in the beginning of our spiritual journey.
Absolutely. When I first started, I could say my awakening per se, or really starting to hone and develop my practice and skills and connect and raise that awareness. I think first and foremost, I was most conscious of working or recognizing my angels.
Okay.
So in particular, Archangel Michael, who's the archangel of protection. He also was associated with police and law enforcement and protection. So both of my parents were cops, so I was familiar with him. But then Archangel Metatron is one that has been very pronounced. And I came to learn that Archangel Metatron works with subtle energies, as well as especially young people and people that have special needs or heightened extrasensory needs. And he also is the scribe of the Akashic Records.
It's funny because when I was starting out, I didn't really know so much about the angels. I mean, obviously, like growing up, like we all know about our guardian angel, right? That guardian angel is something that most of us, I would say, have an understanding of what that is.
Yeah.
But when I was starting out, and, you know, you get into, I don't want to date myself here because it's not so popular now, but you get into the Facebook groups. I mean, Facebook groups are still around, right? But like you're in all these like spiritual Facebook groups and everybody's talking about my guide. And I'm like, what? Everybody has a guide? Like, who's my guide? And I remember like taking a special class where I went into New York City and had this psychic channel my guides, and she channeled our guides, and then she led us through a guided meditation to meet our guides, which is interesting because I have subsequently led my clients in Reiki practice and in crystal healing practice on guided meditations and journeys to meet their guides. So it's funny how the way things go full circle, but I was laughing as we were like sort of prepping for this because I was talking about all of my guides that came through, none of which I have thought about in so long. And now I feel bad if they're still around because they're probably like this, like, we've been over here waiting. You've been ignoring. Yeah. But, you know, it's such, I think, the notion of guides, and Danielle actually pulled a really good book that we have.
But who was the one in particular that was presented to you during that weekend?
With the seersucker suit, or the Pocahontas?
Yeah.
Oh my God! So the so the woman that was the channeler said that one of my guides was Pocahontas, and I'm sorry, this is so ridiculous. It's like also like reminiscent of like when people do past lives and everybody was Cleopatra. You know what I mean? Like not everybody could be Cleopatra. I'm like, the lady's like, your guide is Pocahontas. And I went, sure she is. Sure she is. It just happened to be the same time when it's Elizabeth Warren, right? The senator?
Yeah.
Said that she was indigenous, but then like it turns out she wasn't indigenous. And then I think Was Donald Trump calling her Pocahontas? Something was going on where there was like a lot of back and forth about it. And like, I don't know if you could have heard the term Pocahontas more on the news than you did like in that particular time, because it was like these constant sound bites. And I'm like, this girl was watching the news and like Pocahontas got in her subconscious and she literally said, Pocahontas is my guide.
But it's possible. Maybe Pocahontas was one of your guides, but I think it's important to know, like, you can have many guides.
Yeah. 4 actually came through that channeling session, right? Some of which have been corroborated by other psychics, right? So this is really interesting, and myself as well. So very early on when I started getting into this, and like the notion of guides was really important, because you're like opening yourself up spiritually, and you do when you're new into spiritual journey, which many of you may be, right? You remember this, like you're opening yourself up. You just want to blow out your third eye and your crown chakra. You want to connect to everything. Yeah. You want to go up so badly, and you want to be psychic, and you want to be channeling, and you want to like feel attuned to the everything,
to spirits,
to everything. So like you're opening yourself up, and like you do leave yourself vulnerable. So like not only vulnerable, I don't want to get you guys nervous. I'm not even talking about like vulnerable to like spirits and bad things that are out there, but even like vulnerable to people's jealousy or vulnerable to people's bad thoughts. Like you just leave yourself open a little bit, because like you're busy looking up and you're not like fortifying yourself a little bit sometimes when you're new. And so like I remember like the notion of these guides being really important to me, but I had this blocker protector guide that was this like 7-8 foot tall, basically very skinny, like black shadow figure that other people would see, that was always on my right hand side, that was like a wall of energy. And I feel like I missed this guide. I might be calling him back into the present moment, because your guides change over time.
Well, it's so funny because my protector was always my grandmother. Mm-hmm. So she had passed, but I would always feel her close in energy to me, and I would just feel like she was my gatekeeper. And then when I would consult with psychics that had the gifts of mediumship more developed, they would say, your grandmother is your gatekeeper. And I was like, that makes so much sense to me, because it's something that I've sensed, but to have it validated by somebody who didn't know me was really cool. So actually, it's so funny because we weren't exactly sure what we were talking about, and I changed my outfit, and I'm wearing green to honor my dad.
Yeah.
And yesterday was St. Patrick's Day, and he's an Irish singer and a dual citizen of Ireland, and it's just very near and dear. So, like, I energetically have felt him. So in filming this, I was like, you know what? I'm wearing green for my dad, and I'm wearing this dragonfly for his sister, Aunt Kate, who I always feel is very close to me. And when she passed, we were very, very close. And I said, Aunt Kate, send me a sign. And I drove up to the back of the shop, and I was in my car about to park, and all of a sudden this giant dragonfly comes flying up to the windshield. And I was like, that's odd. I don't normally see dragonflies. And for 5 minutes, it was hovering in front of the windshield. But I just had this feeling overcome me and be like, I'm here. I'm okay. And I just said, hi, Aunt Kate. Like, I just knew it was her. And then when her services came, I told her daughter about it. And I said, keep an eye out for dragonflies. I had a visitation. And she was like, okay. And there was 2 dragonflies circling the service. And I was like, this is amazing. And she goes, look, do you see it? Like, it's, so those are signs. Animals can be signs of visitation or proximity of ancestors, which are a type of spirit guides to you. So once they pass, they're in a different realm, but you can call on them and say, listen, present yourself to me, and you can ask them to present in a specific way, in a specific manner. You can challenge them and say, can you send me a purple giraffe? And then you never know, like all of a sudden, creatively, outside, just forget about it. And then all of a sudden you'll be presented with like a purple giraffe.
Yeah.
And this is a great book, Signs by Laura Lynn Jackson, about connecting and recognizing universal signs and communication from those that we love who are deceased, which are a type of spirit guides.
I think ancestors are so important. I was always taught that our ancestors, our crossover loved ones, are like our first line of defense. Because if you keep in mind, like, you know, your dad, your Aunt Kate, my grandparents, we are their legacy in this world, right? So we literally are here on the backs of all the ancestors that came before us, and they have a vested interest in our success. So I often call on some of my ancestors when I'm having difficulty, but I think we need to keep in mind sometimes in life we had difficult relationships with our ancestors, right? That difficulty doesn't have to continue into our relationship with them in the thereafter as our spirit guides. Like, I did not have a great relationship with my paternal grandfather. I really don't think anybody had a great relationship with my paternal grandfather. That's neither here nor there. But he is one son of a bitch when I need to be protected, when I feel like somebody's doing me wrong. He was always a shrewd business person. He owned his own business. When I'm having difficulty in that respect, I'm always like, Gramps, like, help a girl out, help your girl out. And I do think, like, it's important for us all to sort of like think of our ancestors. What were they good at? And even like the stuff, like, as I said, like my great grandfather, he was a son of a bitch. He had really bad PTSD. He was in the Pacific Theater of World War II. He was in the Army. He was laying down runways and he was getting sniped. He had terrible PTSD. So he wasn't the nicest man. And when he was alive, because he was really going through it, understandably so. But as an ancestor, that energy, that protection, oh my gosh, like it's amazing.
My mom was one of the first New York City female cops. Yeah. And she was tough. She was tough. And like, we had a hard relationship while she was here on Earth. And she taught me how to be fiercely strong and independent and to challenge when somebody says no. Like, and really to just operate with integrity and teachable moments and pushing boundaries, and don't like let anybody keep you down. And all of those things, like, we had a rocky relationship, but like, I call on her when I need that energy. And in her passing, her energy definitely was present during some very, very challenging times.
Oh, she cleaned stuff up right away, your mom, let me tell you. She came in and she was like, no.
F around and find out. I harness that energy. Yeah, and like, so I sense, especially during like the most challenging of times, I call upon them. I call first and foremost upon my ancestors, and I call upon my angels. And, this book here is fantastic. It's written by Yamil Yamunya. I'm sorry. It's called The 7 Types of Spirit Guide, How to Connect and Communicate with Your Cosmic Helpers. It has been some time since I've read this. It's an excellent book. And I just looked through the index because it was so well organized. In preparation for this, I pulled it off the shelf. And the 7 types of spirit guides that they describe include deities, ancestors, ascended masters, nature spirits, animal guides, star beings, and angels. And I agree with that. Yeah. I think, and it's so vast in that categorization, but ancestors are part of our legacy and, time infinity. But nature guides, I spend so much time in nature, and I can't tell you how many times a red cardinal will swoop down when I'm calling on my grandmother, a bright red one. And then if I want my maternal grandmother, a muted brown one.
I like the female.
Yeah, the female will come. And the dragonfly for my Aunt Kate. But like yellow butterflies for my former mother-in-law. So there are all different indicators, but it's also not just like, oh, I see an animal, but what's the essence of the energy and where is your mentality when you see that or when it enters into your awareness? Because if you're like, I'm really going through it right now, I wish you were here with me, help me, and then all of a sudden that animal appears.
Yeah.
Like there's animal totems, there's energies to everything. And it's called animism, the belief that there's a spirit to everything in nature. Some people believe inanimate objects too, but I think there's energy to everything.
Yeah.
So that is a really robust category.
It is. I was thinking about, this past Saturday, I stepped out. I usually work on Saturdays, but I stepped out because my daughter had yet another concert. And so I stepped out and went over to Adelphi to see her perform. And as so often happens whenever I see red-tailed hawks, I look in a place where I have no business looking. And it's almost like my spirit knows that the hawk is going to be there before, right? So I was walking from the parking lot to the Performing Arts Center, and I look up and I see this gorgeous hawk, flying right over my head. And I was like, all right, what's up, right? And it's so funny because right after this concert, something came up with my family, like a piece of news that almost like the hawk was like, be prepared for clarity because clarity is coming. And think about the perspective of hawks, soaring so high. Hawks don't really have to flap their wings or exert energy, right? They're using the wind currents to stay up really, really high so they can see their prey underneath. And it's interesting because I didn't really make sense of it until this moment when we decided to talk about guides and you brought up animal and animal guides. Yep. That it was almost a message of be prepared for the clarity you're going to see. And it was literally like an hour and a half later that I was like, whoa, crazy.
It's really amazing because also I had an experience recently with red-tailed hawk. I moved into a new place. There was crazy turmoil happening. I drove up. I had total fear of the unknown of what lay ahead of me. And I am driving into the parking lot, not the parking lot, the driveway. And immediately to the left is a red-tailed hawk that had just captured its prey, which is such a vulnerable moment for that bird. And it didn't move. We made eye contact and it just looked at me and I looked at it. And he just went to the tree limb right after, calmly took his time, went to the tree limb and watched me to make sure I didn't touch his prey. And I said, I see you. And the message was you are protected. Mm-hmm. I didn't have a doubt in my mind. So I calmly walked around and I said, thank you. And I went inside, give him his privacy. And when I came out, he had moved to the front of my door and left the feathers there. But when I exited the door to empty some things out, that's when it flew away. It didn't leave at that first. I felt so protected and safe. I was like, this is a good place. This is
it's like a blessing.
It really was a blessing. And I got chills up my body and I just said, thank you, universe. Thank you, guides. And that was a very real moment.
Yeah. I mean, especially because the situation that you were in at that time, you literally had to find a place quickly. And it was bam, bam, bam. And it all came together. And I think, that's those moments and being aware of those moments on your spiritual journey and being, like Danielle said, aware of your state of mind or just being open to receiving these signs in the greater abundance of the messages that can come through to you as long as you're, paying attention. It's such a beautiful part of the spiritual journey. But I think knowing exactly who your guides are, it's important, but also they change over time and your relationship with them changes over time too, right? You might not be calling on your guides every day. And like I said, when Danielle said in the beginning that she was really first and foremost into angels because she already had a relationship with Archangel Michael, I didn't really ever have a lot of relationship with the archangels. But that relationship has developed over time now where I call on Michael so much more than I ever did versus in the beginning of my spiritual journey, I was do you know who, I was like that, oh my God, that Dr. Seuss book, do you know who my spirit guide is? Do you know who my spirit guide is? Do you know who my, like asking any psychic, like ask a psychic. I was called up like California psychics. Do you know who my spirit guide is? You know, like, because you just want to know. And you're just like so curious about like who's around you. And I think what's a more beautiful part of the journey is like trusting yourself and trusting the signs that are presented to you. And see like who comes through.
Totally. And I mean, we could talk about ascended masters and deities. We work with the Blessed Mother constantly in our practice. I'm now a Reiki master, and I always call upon Archangel Raphael to join me in the healing session and to facilitate healing and to use me as a channel. And I envision and really visualize in my mind's eye the attributes and correspondences of the green light, and I envision and welcome him into the space, and I hold space for any of my guides or the guides of my client that I'm working with. But you know, Demeter is another one of my spirit guides. We have a practitioner named Samantha who does readings, and you can set up time with her. It's a 45-minute session, and she will go into depth as to like who 4 of your key deities are, spirit guides are that work with you, and not only like who they are, but why, what role they play, why they're helpful, how to work with them. Usually you don't have to have any offerings, but if you really feel called to, like Vinny works very closely with Aphrodite, and he's a licensed esthetician, and he's a glamourist. So like it's perfectly aligned. But Demeter, she's the mother of Persephone. And she said, you know what? Demeter has been with you ever since you had your children. But she's not a mother to you like the divine mother is the mother to you. But she's like, hey, girl, I got you. I understand. So she's more of a peer to you. And I was like, that's so interesting how you describe it. And then she said, Cernunnos is the horned one of the forest. And he's a very old sage. And I go, that makes so much sense with my connection with nature and the animals and like dating back to my ancestry and like so, you know, when you start hearing those types of things and it feels right and it feels natural, like I've also done meditations where through my mind's eye I've had visualizations like there was like this alien being with a very useful energy that came through in a meditation. So that could have been like a star from a different galaxy as a guide to me, but it just felt familiar. And I was like, well, could it have been my imagination? Could have been. But who's to say that that's not real if I felt familiarity and like comfort from it?
Yeah.
So absolutely. I think that's the beauty. There's so much that we don't know, but that's how we can work with them.
Absolutely. I think Sam, when Sam and I were having a conversation, Sam had said that Thoth was one of my guides. And what's really interesting is that the very first tattoo I got when I was 21 years old, I was really into Neil Gaiman's The Sandman, the comic. Now it's like, you know, I think like an audiobook now, but it was a comic book and it was still in production in the 90s. And I also need you all to know that in the 90s, there weren't very many tattoo shops. It's not like it was now. No. In the 90s, it was very hard to get a tattoo license. And there were literally 3 tattoo shops on Long Island. And one of those is still around. And I went and I got an Ankh tattoo because the character Death in the Neil Gaiman, the Sandman, the Sandman sisters' Death. They're part of the Endless. Go check it out. You're gonna if you like this podcast, you're gonna like that. I'm just letting you know. It's like this, okay? And so I got this Ankh tattoo on my I got a tramp stamp, basically, that's what I'm telling you. But like it was like really like the tramp stamp of like the late 90s is like the sternum of today, okay?
But at least
like,
you didn't get a tribal across your back. So.
No, I didn't get the tribal, but I do have the tramp stamp. And it's fine. What can you do?
It's very 90s. Hey. It's very 90s.
But I have this Ankh. Now, it's really interesting that Thoth, who holds an Ankh, would be one of my, guides or deities. Like to me, I'm like, oh, of course, really, really funny. So it's just like, and like you said, you have this connection with, Cernunnos and Demeter. Like it's the same thing with me with Thoth, but I don't have an altar at home. I don't really do much of anything with this knowledge beyond like staying open to the energy and open to the any maybe counsel or advice or anything like that comes through. So I think you also need to keep in mind that you don't really need to do anything if you don't want to and you're not comfortable with it, number one.
Yeah.
Number two is don't rush into creating an altar. Don't rush into practice because a lot of these beings have been around a really long time and their memories are very long. So a lot of times younger people will come in and say, I am a so-and-so devotee and I want to do this and I want to do that and I want to, have a spiritual practice for this entity. And I'm like, be very careful because, you could work with the energies in a way that isn't tying you to them.
Right.
Versus really dedicating yourself in a way is like making a lifelong pact or promise. And our lives are very short compared to these, deities, beings, ascended masters, what have you. So
I call upon them as an invitation to harness that energy and to invite them to help lend support, because the way that I understand them to operate is that they're here to help us on our earthly journey, because I think our earthly journey here is as souls, we're here to learn and to experience and to grow. So all of this collective spirit guides, which come from source, from God, from the heavens, whatever you choose to call it, they're here to provide us help and support and guidance, which is in alignment with our highest and greatest good. But they will never violate our free will.
Right.
So they will provide us with that support and insight, and they will give us the nudges and the support and the direction. But we always have free will to decision upon it and to make our own choices.
Absolutely.
And they'll never violate our free will, so we have to actively invite them in and then always give them thanks. And have grace and just say, thank you. Like when I saw that bird, I go, thank you. I got the message. I feel protected.
Right.
And I do have next to my bed, I have a little tabletop set up with ancestry. Like I have photos of my grandparents. I have rosary beads that were my parents. I have, some Blessed Mother statues or some angels. But they're all just things that I've gathered throughout the years that bring me joy and bring me peace. So collectively, it's a beautiful collection. And I have Archangel Michael's shield that Samantha gave me as a gift. Like, so collectively, it looks all comprehensive, but it's not like an offering to them because they're here. Their job is to help support us. And it's just to pay homage and to say, I feel you, I invite you, I recognize you, and I honor you. And please lend support. I love you, and I'm grateful.
Right. And that's a little bit different. It's really interesting because what we have in the shop is we have a beautiful altar. That's our private shop altar that has Blessed Mother and, just different Blessed Mothers that were collected from all over the world that were given to us, that were found in places. And that is more of a working altar that we do our work on, that we have an offering of roses, and we have different things and incenses that we burn. So that's really very different. And I think even for both of us, because we're at work so much, it's a lot easier to keep up with the altar at work. We're really fortunate in that we could do that, and not a lot of people can have their altar at work. But again, it's not a requirement to do so when you're starting out with, spirit guides and deities and spirit teams and things like that. I also heard from other teachers about everybody has a healing guide, that we have like different teacher guides throughout our lifetime. Like I had a business guide that dresses in a blue seersucker suit. It's a very specific look. His name is like Bradley. Very specific. I haven't thought about him in a while, so I wonder if like he'll come through in a dream. But there's all different guides, and they change over time. Like sometimes if I'm not feeling really well, before I go to bed, I'll ask my healing guide to don't laugh at me.
Okay.
I ask my healing guide to take me to the hall of colors. Okay. Where you can go and you can get healed. And I was like, I like that because I love rainbows. And I love things that are glitter and colorful. So I thought,
I like the visual
if I had to go to a place to get healed, would it look like a hospital or would it look like Joseph's Technicolor Dreamcoat? I think it would be very, very rainbowy. So I asked my healing guide to take me to the Hall of Colors and to heal my physical body while I'm sleeping. Have I ever woken up feeling 100% gangbusters? No, of course not. This is real life. But I do feel on some level like some type of refreshment, and and even sometimes like a lot of times, people come into the shop and they'll say like, I'm sleeping like crap. I'm having bad dreams. I'm having so much anxiety. I'm dreaming that I'm having these repetitive dreams over and over again. And we say like, did you ask your guides to let you sleep?
Yeah.
And they're like,
you have to set boundaries.
Right. Like you can ask your guides. So like on the topic of spirit guides, like asking, like you said, asking for help, asking for a sign, asking for assistance. Can you please allow me to sleep? Can you allow me to sleep deeply? I need to have rest, like all of those things because, we're living in a stressful world. We're living in stressful times. Although, spoiler alert, I'm pretty sure it's been stressful times since humans have had consciousness.
Yeah.
I think that's just the way it goes.
Everything's relative.
But just for ourselves to like calm down and stuff, So I think like super, super important that we could set those boundaries.
I agree. So I think meditation is definitely a good practice to start just calming your mind and quieting yourself so you could be open to receive those messages. And you can just quietly in your mind's eye or even out loud say, I'd like you to present yourself in my mind's eye so that I can see visually like who you are. Or tell me your name. And then all of a sudden you'll hear like a name answer, like said repeatedly. And like you'll just have a recognition. You have to just be open to receive. Because I can't tell you how many people are like, oh, well, tell me what I should know. And then they sit there like this and they doubt everything. Like, no, I need a sign of your sign. Like, it's like, you don't have to challenge them and not believe them. Like, they're here to help you as long as you're open to receive it. Like, somebody can come along and smack in the head and like if you're going to be thick and stubborn, you're not going to receive it.
Listen, we're human beings. We're thick and stubborn. It's just part of that. But
you can say to them, I'd really like to get to know you better. I'd like you to reveal yourself to me. What do you look like? So I am not really like a clairvoyant person. I don't really see images, but I feel things. I'm more clairsentient, and I have claircognizance where I have like a knowingness. So like I've always sensed like some sort of a connection to like herbs and herbalism and like a medicine woman. And then I had a psychic go, one of your guides is standing right behind you, and she is this tall, elder medicine woman from like one of the South American indigenous tribes. And I was like, I feel her presence. She guides me. Like I feel it. It's a knowingness, but I can't physically see her. But that person did have the gifts to see her. So, I mean, she's one of mine. I think we always have personal angels that stay close with us throughout the duration of our life as our guardian angel. But then, see, maybe that's the angels right there. A little validation.
There you go.
But then I also think that there's specific guides that come in for certain periods and stages of our lives to lend support for what we're going through at that time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it's such an interesting and robust part of spiritual practice. And for the person that asked us this question, like, thank you for reminding us of like how exciting leaning into your spirit guides in the beginning of your journey is. Because I remember it being like so exciting and so like, I just like desperately wanted to know, you know, who they were. Yeah. And maybe because before we opened the shop, it wasn't our day-to-day lives. So now it's like we're in this all the time. So I don't know, but I'm not gonna speak for you, but I don't really think about it so much all the time. Right. Because like I'm like immersed in it, you know.
Remember Ganesha? You work so closely with
Ganesha. Yes, so much with Ganesha. And you know, it's really interesting. And you know what? I want to bring that up, that, you know, there is, of course, a difference between cultural appropriation and cultural appreciation. And it, you know, it can be touchy. And it's interesting on the backs of, you know, our episode about spiritual FOMO and spiritual practices that like don't belong to us or things that you have to be initiated in. There are, though, these energies, like, you know, I consider Ganesha, he is a deity, he is a god of Hinduism. He is an ascended master. He is in the category, and some people are going to be pissed off when I say this, but he's in the category of Jesus. He's in that category. Yeah. And so those ascended beings and I don't want to say working in like worship working, but in aligning with the energy of Ganesha that I did in the beginning of my spiritual journey, it wasn't in a way to appropriate him, nor was it in a way to worship him in a way that I am not Hindu and I cannot do, because I do not have that understanding of. But it was with a deep respect and a yearning to be close to that energy. Just like we could have, you know, to be close to the energy of the Blessed Mother, be close to the energy of that mother figure, even if you don't come from a Christian background.
Well, Kuan Yin is a very close equivalent of divine feminine maternal deity. So, absolutely.
You know, I think things have become a little bit more confusing as we've come to understand and not, you know, come to understand appreciation versus appropriation, and still working through it, because it's you know, a moving, it's nuanced. So I think always checking in with ourselves and our practice, and, you know, not wanting to insult anybody or anything like that is important, but also that, you know, our spiritual relationships are our own as well.
And I think there's spiritual truisms that transcend religion. So as long as your practice is done with reverence and respect and honor, and it's an invitation, so that you're not saying like, hey, I command, or I've summoned this energy. No, you're not summoning a god. You're just a mere mortal. Yeah, you know, exactly. You know, like we're none of us are getting out of here alive. So, you know, like then we may just stay up in the heavens, or we may pick a new life in a new body in a new culture to experience. Who knows? We don't know. I guess we'll find out in the afterlife. But you know, but I do believe as long as it's a request for support and help from our spirit guides, they are available and they're happy to help us, as long as we just say, hi, please help me with this purpose. Please help me, you know, with your grace. And then you just, thank you for being here with me.
Right,
and
the
then
gratitude.
The more that you do this as part of your regular practice, it becomes more inherent, because like Dina said, like it's not even a conscious thing with us anymore.
Yeah.
But quite honestly, we're like, oh, so I felt the energy of this one, and I called on this one, and I worked with this one, and like my panther, I was given a panther stuffed animal when I was a baby. I had a brown teddy bear and my black panther, and that black panther was my body pillow. I slept on it. It was my protector. I still have it in my closet today.
Oh.
And it is one of my animal totems in life. A black panther is very mysterious. It's shy. It stays in the shadows, so it's hard to be seen, but it observes everything, and it's fiercely protective. And also it's very mystical. So, I think that definitely has always resonated with me. Yeah. And I don't think it's a surprise that was gifted to me as a child, and it still today remains so poignant.
There are no accidents.
Yeah.
There are no accidents. So interested in hearing from you guys and learning more about how you connect with your spirit guides. Who are your spirit guides? How did you learn about them? How do you work with them? Drop us some comments.
Yeah.
Shoot us an email. You can find us everywhere on social media at Amityville Apothecary. And give us more of your questions. This was such a fun topic to dive into. Yeah. What else can we sort of dive in for you in our podcast? And thanks so much for watching and listening. Topic. We really appreciate you guys, and we'll see you soon.
See you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much for listening to us today. We look forward to connecting with you again soon, so be sure to come back for the next episode.
And make sure to follow us on social media. It's the fastest way you can get in touch with us at Amityville Apothecary, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube. And of course, subscribe to this podcast. We are eternally grateful for your support.